that's what we're doing right now. Like when Marvel and DC were first building out their universes, right? They're still laying the groundwork, the foundation. They're still building up some of these characters. They're in the early stages. That's where we're at right now. And so if you are an early Rippaverse fan, then you're kind of at that ground level. And there's something really special about that, because if you're anything resembling a longtime comic book fan, there really is something valuable about being there when something happens, right? Whenever, like people who were around, it was just a couple of years prior to my time, but like say when Crisis on Infinite Earths was happening over at DC, that was a big deal. Like to be buying books on a weekly and monthly basis at that time was a huge deal. To buy Death of Superman, right, when that hit the stands, right? There's something special about that. And I'm not saying that the books that we're putting out are like, oh, it's immediately as iconic as Death of Superman. I'm not an imbecile. But to be at the ground level of a burgeoning universe, that means you get to kind of like be a part of the world building. And there's something really special about that. Like as we on the creative side are doing the world building, the fans who are here with us this early, they kind of are too.
Right.
And so you become kind of part of the family that way. Like you're here as it's all happening in real time. And there's really something to be said about that.
I agree, Ben. And that's one of the things that I love about it. Like I said in the beginning, being able to have seen it from the start off point and watch it grow. And it's not even just like, oh yeah, I'm an early investor or whatever like that for it. It is you're watching the story or stories grow. And not all of them, it's not like, oh yeah, ISOM is like, hey, if you look at this through line, you have ISOM that leads into Blue Shift, that leads into whatever these other stories are, whatever like that for it. It's not necessarily that same thing. It's not like, hey, you have one story and everybody's just working together to build out this one story. But it's a universe of stories, and you have these characters that go on their own independent arcs that sometimes intertwine, sometimes they can be completely separate. Sometimes you're traveling and you're kind of expanding realms from Zaylin all the way to, like, if Zaylin and Blue Shift end up interacting, that's going to be crazy.
As a self-professed Chuck Dixon fanboy, if Chuck has any remote like sliver of an interest of involving Zephyr in any of his stories, I will scream and lose my mind.
Dude, I know it has to be.
I grew up with his work.
Dude, it has to be so amazing to have the opportunity to work with these icons, man. Chuck Dixon? Like, come on, man. It's amazing.
It's ridiculous, and I consider it a blessing. And I also consider it a learning experience.
Oh, yeah.
Because I grew up reading his run on Batman and Robin and Nightwing and Birds of Prey. And I've read some of his Punisher as well. I'm not a gigantic Punisher guy, but Chuck Dixon wrote some Punisher. And so I was like, well, Chuck Dixon's writing some Punisher, so I'm going to read some Punisher because it's Chuck Dixon, right? But having the opportunity to look at the way that Chuck lays out a script, that to me, like, that's something that I get to, like, I'm trying to be a sponge over here. Like, exactly. I'm trying to absorb that as much as I possibly can and be like, okay, so how's Chuck going about this? How does he lay out his script in a way that plays to his artist's strengths and still allows for like really strong, tight storytelling? And it's a learning process, and I'm super blessed. I'm surrounded by a lot of really great creatives over the Rippaverse. I constantly make the joke that I get to be the non-creative guy surrounded by a bunch of creative people. And the truth is, I think I'm a creative guy, but the fans ultimately, after they read Blue Shift Tryouts, are going to be the ones that are like, yeah, man, you're a creative guy. Or they're going to be like, yeah, stick with the pigeons, buddy. Like, and it's good. And if they say that, ultimately, like, the fans' word is kind of law out there, right? Where it's like, because if people, that's the big issue right now with a lot of mainstream comics.
Yeah, they don't listen.
Where it's like, nobody's buying this book. Nobody's reading this book, or the people who did buy it and read it initially for the first issue or two are like, I'm not interested. I don't like this. This isn't any good, or this doesn't speak to me, or it's not interesting for whatever number of reasons. Like, if that's the case, why would I continue to try and shove a story down people's throats that they're not interested in? That doesn't make any sense. And Eric's not that kind of businessman.
Exactly.
If people aren't interested in it,
then we ain't
guess
doing
what? I don't get to write more Blue Shift.
Exactly. Stick to the pitches.
For someone who's been kind of hidden away for all of his life up until this point, that's a big deal. That's something he doesn't want to screw up. All he wants is to be a normal kid. But the fact of the matter is, he's not.
He's not.
He's not a normal kid. He's anything but. And so there are a lot of hurdles. There are a lot of speed bumps that are thrown in his way. Yes, those puns are deliberate. That's not something that gets shut off with me. That's just how I am. And you can expect that in almost anything that I write.